And we are back with story time for this week. Light of the Infinite. This is my second book, The Exodus of Darkness. And we're on page 99, the chapter called When to Abstain from Creating and Meditate on Being a Creation. So this is a lot about Shabbat because this Torah portion, Ki Tisa, talks about Shabbat a good deal. And it also talks about the 13 attributes, the 13, basically how we draw in this rachamim, this unlimited mercy that we learn about in this Torah portion, where Hashem, God, the divine, our source, has unlimited mercy in store for us, and it's unending, and we can tap into it at any time. So as Rabbi Nachman says, Im tamin sheyechol litaken, as tamin sheyechol, lekakel as tamin sheyechol litaken. So if you believe that you could destroy something, then believe that you could also repair that same thing. That if you feel like you can fall in the most darkest way or the most distant way or in a way that you find yourself in a hopeless state, then believe that you could also bring yourself to the highest state, into this space where you're feeling good and you're feeling aligned again. And that was actually when I was struggling with depression, at various times in my life. The way that I overcame it was realizing, with everything around me being good and I wasn't in this dire situation. I was able to pay rent and I had a community and loved ones and all these things, but still I found myself in this dark state, oftentimes where I didn't want to wake up in the morning. It was really bad. And I realized if everything around me is good and I could be in a good state and I'm not, and I could bring myself into this darkness, then the opposite must be true. I must be able to bring myself into the light. So I'm going to jump into the book because this is story time. So it's wild to think how some folks don't know the true weekly epicness that is Shabbat. But like much in life, so much of its preciousness remains concealed until each person actually experiences it for themselves. Cultivating a community that we feel is ours is key in feeling one with sacred spaces. Doing so often requires stepping out of one's comfort zone and either inviting people to create the space or inviting oneself into other spaces so that they become our own. When we haven't done that yet or don't feel motivated enough to do so, we inevitably feel disconnected from the commandments as a celebration and feel them more as obligations. How do we elevate the sacred moments and tap into the beauty and joy that lies within? It's always a mix of action and education, educating oneself on what the ritual entails and taking action to follow the ritual so that we can access the potent power of feeling that comes with being grounded and unified with oneself, with each other, and most importantly, with our source, with the divine. In this chapter's Torah portion, Ki Tisa, we are commanded to keep Shabbat, which is the only Jewish ritual mentioned in the Ten Commandments and the one mitzvah commandment mentioned in the Torah more than any other. There is no more elevated bridge between this world and the next. It's the finite time and space where our souls feel tapped into the infinite. Its splendor is ineffable. And we read Hashem, God said to Moshe, to Moses, saying, "And you speak to the children of Israel, saying, just observe my Sabbaths, for it is a sign between me and you for your generations to know that I am Hashem, who sanctifies you." Rashi adds, "And although I charge you to command them concerning the works of the Mishkan, do not view things so lightly as to push aside the Shabbat because of that work." So meaning there's this holy work that we're commanded to do. And Hashem and God's saying that even this holy work, Shabbat still is more important. And we have to basically abstain from this holy work and focus and be in alignment with and meditate on being in Shabbat, this space where we could tap into the infinity in this finite space. Yeah, sorry about that. I was getting a phone call. Forgot to do the do not disturb. All right, we're back. It's written Shabbat Shabbaton. The repetitive term indicates the importance and the level of rest in mind. The Hebrew word nofesh, resting, is related to nefesh, spirit. Hashem, God, created the world in 6 days, and on the seventh, the divine rested. We emulate this by engaging in 6 days of creating, trying to conquer nature and mold it to our desires, while on the seventh day, On Shabbat, we are told to stop, take a break, meditate on being created, and abstain from creating ourselves. We take a pause from trying to rise above what is natural and meditate on nature itself, on receiving in full faith that the Infinite One provides and is fully in charge, and that no matter how hard we work, in the end, it is all in the Creator's hands. As the Shabbat prayer reads, "Rejoice in your kingdom, you who keep Shabbat." Shabbat, the seventh day of our week, is a taste of the infinite, but it's still bound in time and space. It's a gift from God that we even get that taste, as it's stated in Talmud in the Gemara Shabbat. The Holy One, blessed be He, said to Moshe, "I have a precious gift in my treasure house, and it's called the Shabbat." So much so that when I'm in it, it's so hard to let go. Feeling the anxiety of getting back to the regular week when Shabbat's coming out and turning your phone or computer back on, and what might await when we do that. Now more than ever, it seems essential to take this time to truly unplug once a week, to center oneself without the constant distraction of modernity, shifting focus to community, prayer, meditation, and truly being present. The Khatam Sofer expounds, by granting us the Shabbat with its unique spiritual powers, Neshama Yetera, that additional soul that we tap into, Hashem, God, reminds us that spirituality is a divine gift. If it were accomplished because of our own prowess, no distinction would exist between Shabbat and any other day. From the special nature of Shabbat, we conclude that Hashem, who created the holy day, nurtured the Jewish soul as well. V'shamru v'nei Yisrael et ha-Shabbat, la'asot et ha-Shabbat l'dorotam b'rit olam. So the Jewish people must observe Shabbat, making it an eternal covenant throughout their generations. Rabbi Nachman of Breslov writes in Likutei Maran, his magnum opus, that in this verse, l'dorotam, throughout their generation, alludes to dirah, which is dwelling or home, teaching that we have to draw Shabbat into our dwelling so that our physical spaces will feel the spiritual light that is Shabbat. The next verse we read, the famous, "For in the 6 days God made," Rabbi Nachman teaches that it can also be read as, "For God made 6 days," meaning Hashem, God, created time and the 6 days that concentrically encircle the inner focal point of creation, which is Shabbat. Each day that is closer to Shabbat in time is also spiritually closer, which is also why human beings were created last, as we have the ability to elevate time and draw down the infinite light. The 10 Commandments appear in the Torah 2 times. The first time, historically, when they were given at Mount Sinai. The second time, in the context of Moshe's review of the Exodus, just before he passes away at the end of the 40 years in the desert. The first version reads as follows: "Remember the Sabbath day to keep it holy." The second version reads, "Guard the Sabbath day to keep it holy as God, your God, commanded you." The second version really emphasizes that God commands it, but also says that it's your God that commands you, making it personal. There's a similarity with the commandment to honor one's parents. The first version reads, "Honor your father and mother in order that your days be long on the land God, your God, is giving to you." The second version reads, "Honor your father and your mother as God, your God, commanded you, in order that your days be long and in order that it be well with you on the land that God, your God, is giving you." The Arizal explains that these 2 commandments as equivalent, one honoring your bodily, physical parents, and the other honoring your spiritual parents, the Zer Anpim and the Nukva, who are referred to as the 2 Sabbaths. It's often in the famous sage's statement that if the Jewish people would keep 2 Sabbaths properly, they would redeem immediately, meaning the Messiah, this redemptive state, the Mashiach, would come if we only kept 2 Shabbatot. So the Arizal has a different explanation as from what we traditionally understand from this saying from Chazal. The Arizal explains that every Jewish soul is produced by the union of the Zer Anpim and the Nukva, the female of Zer Anpim, Aramaic for the Hebrew word nekeva, feminine, referring to Zer Anpim's bride. And that these partsufim, these anthropomorphic counterparts and maturation of the 10 Sfirot, or divine emanations, may be considered our spiritual parents. While most understand the sage's statement to mean 2 Shabbatot, 2 Sabbaths in a row, the mystical meaning is actually that we must keep 2 aspects of Shabbat, the feminine, the night, and the masculine, the day. By honoring Shabbat in the mystical meaning, we fulfill the commandment to honor our parents spiritually, and that is the redemption. This is the mystical meaning of everyone must fear his mother and his father and keep my Sabbaths. It's all in one verse, in one pasuk. Written in Kedoshim, which is actually my bar mitzvah Torah portion, the plurality of the Sabbaths represent the father and the mother. In Sefer Yetzirah, the Kabbalistic book of formation, which Rabbi Aryeh Kaplan has a beautiful translation of, and a lot of the different manuscripts and translations of the order and all that, attributed to Abraham. It's written that the 6 days of the week are masculine and have 6 directions pointing outwards, but the Sabbath is feminine, the center point which draws all 6 points together. Rabbi Kaplan says that this teaches us that when we look at ourselves in terms of our external relationships, we are looking at our masculine identity. But when we look at ourselves, our inner core, that is the feminine entity. All week long, our struggles to gain spirituality is on a male level. But on Shabbat, we are on a female level, absorbing the fruits of all that we have done during the week. Without the Shabbat, there would be no way of receiving. The female receives over 1 million sperm cells. Only one is selected, and from her one fertilized egg, she gives back a complete life, an infant. There is a receiving, but what comes from that is completion. Rabbi Kaplan explains that masculinity is giving, but the essence of femininity is receiving and completing. Shabbat is a weekly opportunity to complete a cycle and receive by enjoying the blessings that we earn through giving during the week. So, of course, this is a way to understand the feminine and the masculine. Here, he's drawing it in biology and in this world, but it's also on the spiritual level, the feminine and masculine that we have within ourselves and how we can interact and how we can bring these different elements through the work that we're doing to be back in alignment with our source. The Hebrew word for faith is emunah. Kaplan points out that it comes from the same root as uman, a craftsman. Faith cannot be separated from action, but by what act in particular do we demonstrate our belief in God as creator? The answer now becomes obvious. The one ritual that does this is the observance of Shabbat. It's the confirmation of our belief in God as the creator of all things. We now understand that what the Talmud means when it says that one who does not keep the Shabbat is like an idol worshiper. There are 2 parts to keeping Shabbat. First, observing the laws of Shabbat in all their details in order to fulfill the commandment and not for any other motive. And second, to rest from work on Shabbat because we enjoy resting from our work. It's key to tap into the holiness and the energy of this first part, connecting to Hashem, God, because it is a bond, a sign, a covenant, a siman, and because it is Hashem who sanctifies us, which is what is written out in the Torah portion. It is a sign between me, Hashem, and you for generations, to know that I am Hashem who sanctifies you. Shabbat's a time to take a break from viewing yourself as the one in control and demonstrate through actions that your faith is fully in Hashem as the one creator. Hasidic teachings refines the meaning of hashgacha, divine providence, defining it as Hashem as God's caring watchfulness and direct personal supervision, hashgacha prati. And this is of everything that exists, all inanimate matter, plants, animals, humanity. For a person, hashgacha more specifically signifies God's ongoing active participation in every aspect of our lives, and providing each person with the necessary means to serve him and to make his immanence, i.e. the divine presence, known in the world. This is most apparent with regard to our livelihood. As I previously had mentioned, at least in one of the other chapters, I've personally seen this in my own life many times. I can make hundreds of sales calls and not land anything. However, if I stay positive, do the work that needs to be done, and stay hopeful in giving, I could be a vessel for receiving. Then I might get a call the next day, seemingly out of the blue, and land a big money deal. This is one way to see that we aren't in charge and can't control the outcome of many of the situations. The way to demonstrate this is by taking a break from earning money and working in all its various manifestations for the full 25 hours of Shabbat, and showing with full faith that we trust that Hashem is watching over us in all his ways. Mark Twain astutely points out, if the statistics are right, the Jews constitute but 0.25% of the human race. It suggests a nebulous puff of stardust lost in the blaze of the Milky Way. Properly, the Jew ought hardly be heard of at all, but he is heard of. He's always been heard of. He is as prominent on the planet as any other people, and his importance is extravagantly out of proportion with the smallness of his bulk. His contributions to the world's list of great names in literature, science, art, music, finance, medicine, and abstruse learning are also very out of proportion with the weakness of his numbers. He has made a marvelous fight in this world in all ages, and has done it with hands tied behind him. He could be vain of himself and be excused for it. The Egyptians, the Babylonians, the Persians rose, filled the planet with sound and splendor, and then faded to the dream stuff and passed away. The Greeks and Romans followed and made a vast noise, and they were gone. Other people have sprung up and held their torch high for a time, but it burnt out, and they sit in twilight now and have vanished. The Jews saw them all, survived them all, and is now what he always was, exhibiting no decadence, no infirmities of age, no weakening of his part, no slowing of his energies, no dulling of his alert but aggressive mind. All things are mortal but the Jews. All other forces pass, but he remains. What is the secret of his immortality? I believe Ahad Ha'am, the founder of cultural Zionism, who is famously quoted as saying, in the answer to Twain's question, more than the Jews have kept Shabbat, Shabbat has kept the Jews. It's this power of this commandment that has preserved the people tasked to shine a perpetual light and elevate the fallen sparks in a world of darkness. Shabbat shalom. Love you guys.